I'm going to introduce you to Denis Riordan, the Geodetic Advisor for our area. Welcome to the club, Denis.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, hear you well, thank you.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and share my screen here.
I see it now.
Okay, all right, finally. So, all right, so I wanted to appreciate the opportunity to be a part of what's this outreach meeting this afternoon. And so I just want to kind of, my presentation is really kind of a follow-on to what Galen has talked about, and as far as he talked about the GPS on benchmark project overall, and what it's about, what we're trying to do with the information that we get from that. And so I wanted to talk about a little more details on how to participate in that for anyone who hasn't done OpenShare, because basically that is the means of how you submit data and participate in this project. So wanted to show just a little bit about our web page. As far as this was the web page as far as until just maybe a month or so ago. You would get to it through this this web address as far as the ngs.noaa.gov, but we now have a new page. They've updated it, and so there's some things that are you still get to it by the same web address. Some things have, the look has changed and where you access some things, but most of the pull down information that was there before, the pull down menus, those are pretty much the same. We've got a quick access for, they look at, what people access most often. And so they've updated that. There's the Opus, the NGS Explorer, where you can look for, marks via a map. And there's also, other things as far as the cores and the new datums. We also have quick links to other things as far as projects that are going on. As Tony was talking about in the beginning, like the top right of this area has got the State Plane Coordinate Project. And so then there's also options there as far as, updates that we're doing, things that we're, news items that we put out. So, but down at the bottom right, there is the link as far as to be able to get to the GPS on Benchmark web page. And so if you go there, you'll see there's a lot of different options over on the left as far as, there's the recover, observe, report, the web map. It gives you what Galen was talking about, the progress dashboard, and so that there's a link there for that. We also have related links as far as there's NGS, the Data Explorer that I talked about. But there's also a link here as far as for the, Galen talked about doing mark recoveries and the forms for that. There's the option. There's one as far as a actual tutorial video as far as how to do uploads to Opus. So that's something that you could take a look at and access also. There's also we do a couple of different subscriber services, just email subscriber service. And so there's one for the GPS on Benchmark. So if you sign up for that, anytime you get there's a notice that goes out about the program, the project, you will get that and be able to stay up to date on it all. So that's a web page as far as there, when you look at it, as far as again, like I said, as far as the participation is basically doing Opus share observations and submitting that and getting those through the overall Opus share process. There's basically 4 different components or parts to that. You do your GPS observations, and those have to be 4+ hours as far as on a published benchmark, or one that had a published orthometric height. You do a description, and it's not really looking for a description as like from the the traditional data sheet where it talks about, you begin at the post office in the middle of town and you go so many miles out a particular highway. It's not looking for that sort of information, because the solution, the Opus solution data sheet, we call it, as far as it actually has the coordinates on there, and it also utilizes a Google map. And so most anybody can, either use that map or plug those coordinates into their GPS and they can get there. But, if the mark is over on the right, it's on the shoulder, and it's covered up with grass, then how do I find it when I get there? How far off a center line? What's the references? Okay. So that's the kind of description that they're kind of looking for on this in an OpenShare solution submittal. So you need an accurate antenna height, and you need to know your antenna type, and you need two photos, one a close-up and basically what we call a horizon photo, with these two examples that are on the right. Close enough to where you can read the stamping on the disc or the access lid for the mark. The horizon photo kind of gives a view of what's around. Better access. It's more information as far as for somebody actually looking to recover it, but also kind of tells people what's around, what obstructions there might be as far as view of the sky if they go to observe or use this mark. So as far as for the GPS on benchmark process, basically, you're going to search the GPS on benchmark web map for marks to observe. You're going to do your field recon to see if the mark is, if it's there, you can use it. You're going to collect your data, and then you will come back, you'll download, you'll submit that information along with metadata that you've collected on that mark. You will be sent once that is, the observations are acceptable, then you will be sent back a draft or a beta version of the solution, or how it will be posted onto the web page. And once you approve that everything's correct, then it will be loaded and able to be accessed on our website. And then at some point, as far as after they get that information in and they update, the updates will go to the map, and then you would actually be able to see that as a mark that, as long as it has the number of observations on it, what is being asked for, then you would see that that one is it's finished as far as the number of observations what we need for it. So those are the kind of the 5 processes. I would go into it a little more in detail on those. So Galen had shown you as far as the how to use and how to access that web map, as far as to look for marks to observe. You only want to do ones, like he had mentioned, as far as that had a prior published orthometric height on it. There's this, the priority list is, as Galen mentioned, as far as it really comes from a refined list of what's in the NGS database. In other words, we've gone through and they've run some root algorithms on the database of information to what we have available to try to refine as far as not to give a shortened list, a target list, if you will, of marks that we think may be there. I mean, we've had more recent recoveries, you know, and so it's something that hopefully people won't be wasting their time as far as to, there's no guarantee it's there, but hopefully it is, you know. You know, you want to take note of the number of observations, what are needed. Is it need one? Does it need two? Whether it's a priority A or B. You know, in other words, A is, you know, that's, you want to go for one of those and to start if you can, if it's in a location that's good for you as far as where you want to go and observe. You know, you need to go once, you know, from that you want to schedule your observations as far as and as you know, we talked about there's ways of looking at that as far as is it already gone showing as being complete on our web map, or is it still open as far as needing those observations. You want to read the mark description information for the last, in other words, you know, pick a mark, get the data sheet for that mark, and, you know, look at the description, the recoveries, what's the last recoveries. You know, was it something that, you know, somebody said was, you know, they didn't find it, but, you know, that may be, but if they know, you know, they put a note down there that they looked for the mark, but there was highway construction going on, say for a widening project, well, then it's very likely that that mark may not be there, you know. So what I did is I pulled a list of marks as far as what's in the NGS database for all the marks what are published. Now this is both, you know, this is showing both horizontal and vertical, and this is not saying that all of those marks are there. That's just what's in the NGS database. So you can use that priority list, but there's a lot of these marks, like Galen had mentioned, as far as that they're probably, you know, they're probably there. Some of them are being used. It's a favorite mark of some people, but nobody's done a recovery note on it, so we don't know that it's there or not. But if you do, and you certainly, it may not be on the priority list, but if you know it's there, you certainly can observe those marks and to get them updated and to be a part of the project. This is the, you know, just the priority list as Galen had shown on from the web map. And if we zoom in, you can see that there are, you know, there are both A and B marks with the, you know, and some of them as far as whether they have a yellow dot or a red dot, you know, determine whether they need one observation or two observations. But you can see there's somewhat of a void of information south of 20, kind of north of Alexandria, going out in a kind of a V area, triangular area. And some of that as far as it may be the type of information as far as where, you know, it showed on that other map that there are marks in our database that are published through that area, but they may not be ones that we can utilize information from as far as how their heights were derived. I don't know. I haven't looked into that specifically. Now, the southern part of the state has been historically, or over the last number of years, 20 years at least, area of where it's very dynamic as far as vertically, and NGS has been doing updates, control updates through that region, and it's you know, there's issues there as far as because of the way we're publishing, but also, you know, marks that that we don't have any information on for the last 30 years as far as you know, whether those heights are good. We know they're out of date, but we don't know what they are today. So we are suppressing those heights, or we've superseded them. And so there's a database issue as far as, you know, when, you know, it goes to pull that information. And so coming up on the map, there is, I'll talk a little more about that as far as, you know, the marks available and what's coming up on the priority list for the southern part of the state towards the end. So kind of the next step, as far as once you've picked out the marks that you want to, you think you want to observe, is you're going to need to go out and recon these marks and make sure that they're there. They're, you know, is it in good condition? Is it GPSable? The data sheet might say it's GPSable, but you know, there may have been a lot of trees that have grown up. Somebody put up a building, or who knows what's going on, to where it may not be really accessible for GPS at this time. Take the data sheet, you know, get a copy of that data sheet, print it out, and take it out with you so that you can look at the description, the references, and make any changes. As far as, a lot of times, you know, a power pole, a house, different things that were referenced, they may be gone now. So, you know, write on there the date that you're there, you know, and if you have any new references that you establish, write that information in there, because you're going to need that for doing the mark recovery. You may need it for the description that you're going to submit with OpenShare. You can take your mark pictures, as far as you can take that close up and the horizon photos at that time. Check the quality of your pictures before you leave, as far as make sure they're clear and you can read it. There's nothing obstructing the view of being able to see the actual mark in your photo. So again, Galen kind of he talked about it at the very end. This is an example for some of the states through their GIS have taken this GPS on benchmark priority marks list, and they've incorporated that into a state Arcgis or an Arc web map. And so people, this is the Alabama map, and it shows where you can actually go in there. The purple is where people can actually go in there, select a mark, and schedule that they are going to observe that mark. So this is where it kind of cuts down on that, what Galen was talking about, as far as people observing twice on a mark and wasting efforts in that respect, where you could be observing an additional mark. So once you've gone out, you've reconned it, you've got the marks there, it's good, and you're going to observe it. A few things that you need to do as far as before you go out is, one, you need to measure your tripod HI before you go out into the field. In other words, when that tripod is set up and it's plumb, what is it from the tip of that the point to where that antenna reference point is going to sit on the top of the tripod. As far as fixed type tripods, they improve HI measurements as far as the accuracy and consistency of that. But as far as they're recommended, but they're not required as far as for OpenShare submittals. You need to understand, as far as the antenna type and the manufacturer's what they call, what is the antenna reference point. There's some of them out there that have a quick disconnect that's incorporated in there, and that adds to the overall HI, what you're going to enter in when you submit this information to OpenShare. Again, take your data sheet with you. Make sure on your whoever's doing the observations, they're on the correct mark, but then also take a log sheet with you as far as to fill out, as far as, what is the mark, what's the PID, what's the, start and stop time, what's the date, and what's your HI, what's the equipment that you're using as far as the receiver, the antenna, model and type. And, are there any, what's your overall HI? Are there any issues during the session? So it's good to have all of that information as far as for once you, for later. All right. Normally you can, it's a good idea to take additional pictures while you're out there, because sometimes we've seen it as far as where these fixed height tripods, a lot of them have a 1.5 meter, a 1.8, and a 2 meter setting on them. And we've had it where people, they put it on the 1.8, but it got entered as a 2. And if you have a photo, you can a lot of times you can discern that, whether that was correct or not. There's normally you want to orient your antenna to north. Most manufacturers have, they've engineered these antennas to where they say it really does make a difference, but it does as far as when you start talking geodetic level accuracies. And so they do have a north reference point on there. So that's something that you want to know, and make sure that you put that towards north every time, just adding more consistency to your observation data. During the time of your session, you want to check the tripod bubble, or before you start, check that tripod bubble and make sure it's in adjustment, and it doesn't move as far as throughout the time of your observations. If it's a rod mark, you may need, sometimes these rod marks have a dimple on them, sometimes they don't. So you may need a adapter sleeve to be able to keep that tripod point on the top of that rod mark. It's suggested as far as you put sandbags on the tripod feet, and make periodic checks on your equipment throughout your session. This is an example of an adapter. It's a sleeve. It has a place underneath where it fits over a 5/8 inch rod, stainless steel rod, but then it has a hole through the top where it would actually allow the tripod point to sit on top of the rod. This is not an endorsement of the Hickson manufacturing. It is something that's available. We're not endorsing this, but there are other ones out there. This is just one example of it. So that's something that's good to have, really, for any of your surveying that you're doing, where you're incorporating, trying to put a GPS rod, a tripod on a rod mark. So this is where I talk about, as far as this is off of the Opus webpage, as far as it shows you some things that are important as far as the measuring that HI, because we're trying to deal with heights. We're trying to get the best heights, the most correct heights, what we can, as far as to determine what's the height of this mark at this point in time. So we want to measure that HI as closely as we can, because we don't want to add any error to our measurements overall and what gets in. There's also antenna calibration, and I'll try to show you this live as far as where you can go to it. But that antenna, that's where knowing your antenna type and model comes into play, because through testing of the field, the antenna phase, the center of that, the electronic center of that antenna, it varies as far as with the height and the path of these satellites, where they are as far as in the overall the sky. And so it changes as that antenna moves. And so we need to, it's all modeled as far as, and so Opus applies that model once you submit your information, depending upon what you enter as far as the antenna type. It cannot automatically read that. So this is why you need to know your antenna type before, certainly before you submit, but you should know it while you're out in the field also. So this is just an example of, this is the traditional NGS log sheet. You want to try to have you guys or yourself, or whoever's going out, who's doing the observations, fill it out completely. You know, I mean, you got four plus hours, and so might as well, you know, take that information down while you're there in the field. There is, you know, this just shows an example of where you write on the back of the sheet or on the back of the data sheet. You know, some of the references, updated references that you'll use to put in when you go to do your actual Opus submittal for Opus Share. There is off of the Opus, you know, you can get to it from the GPS on Benchmark page or the Opus Share page. There's a modified data sheet or field log sheet. What doesn't require quite as much information as the traditional NGS log sheet. You can print that out and take it with you, take that with you too. So these are just a couple of photos as far as kind of examples. You know, like the one on the right, it's blurry. You want to make sure you clear enough off to where you can actually see the mark. If you carry a wire brush with you, you know, just a small one, you can kind of brush it a little bit to where you can read the stamping. You know, this is a good horizon photo. You can actually step back a little more. You know, don't have ones where you know, as far as you can't tell where the mark is. It's good to have something in there, you know, and really don't, you know, we're looking for information about the marks, not really people. So Opus Share, as far as, you know, we talked about it, as far as that there are quality factors that have to be met as far as before we're going to actually accept and, you know, I do air quotes as far as publish this mark. It's a Opus sharing, but you can see as far as their submit it the next morning. Okay. So again, as I mentioned, as far as submitted Opus share, just a regular Opus first to check your quality factors. Once you know everything's good, then you're ready to submit. But so you would go to the NGS web page as far as for Opus. And there's a number of pieces of information here. I think I was going to try to do it live here. So let me just go to our web page here. So if I go to the Opus page, so this is where you would submit your information. And just for people's knowledge, as far as there's all of the red text is actually a hot link to more information. So it will like if you want to know as far as, well, what are they asking for as far as antenna height, it will take you to another page that has lots of information about Opus. And it will give you that diagram that what we talked about as far as for the what it's looking for as far as the HI. If you like on the antenna, it will actually, it goes back to that same page. You can get to it off the NGS web main page, but there's also a hot link right here. Hopefully you can see my pointer where it says antenna calibration. So that will take you to the NGS antenna calibration page where you can go down and let's just, we'll just use the Trimble, for example. So you go to Trimble and there's a couple of different, you know, categories. There's one that tells you the code, you know, or it has a column for the code, random code, images,
who the calibration and what kind of calibration it was by, type that was done, the description of the antenna, when that calibration was done. It tells you as far as for the antenna reference point, it's and you can get there's a list as far as all these acronyms. So if you click on that, it'll go to it. But like this one is the bottom of the antenna mount. The north reference point is the TMT. Well, what is that TMT? So if we go down here, we can see that is the tape measure tab as far as off of the antenna. So apparently it has a little tab where you can use a tape measure to measure down to the mark, get your HI, and that is the north reference point. So there's lots of information that you can get there. But as far as, let's just say that you were using a 41-249 antenna. Well, there's several different ones here. There's a SCIT, there's a none, there's a TZGD, and there's another one that's a USCG. And so you want to know which one is the correct one for matching to your information. So one, you can look at it as far as the drawing of the antenna. You can see where it has the label. It has a side view, and you can see it's just the antenna versus this SCIT, where it actually shows. Well, it's not that one. It's this TZGD. If you look at the side, it actually has a radome, which does change the antenna phase center. So you want to make sure that whenever you go to do your selection for submitting your data, you pick the TRM 41-249 none. So you want to make sure you get that one, because most likely you do not have a radome as you're collecting your information. So that's the antenna ref as far as calibration. So you want to make sure you have all that information, that before you go to actually submit to Opus. So you're going to put in your antenna height, put your email in, and then before you go and hit upload to static, you want to tell it, yes, I want to share my solution. If you don't select that, it's just going to go to regular Opus. So, and it will not share it. You'll just get a solution report back, and that'll be the end of that. So, so I've talked about the antenna calibration. So let me go back. So as far as once you've got all that information, you've entered, and from that Opus submittal, once you say yes, I want to share, and you hit the upload to static, then it will go to the next page, and it'll ask you for what's the PID, give me your descriptive information, connect me to the photos that we're going to upload for this. So it'll ask you all that information once you say, yes, I want to share. So let's say that, we're to the point, you've done all that. Once that has been received and reviewed as far as by people at the headquarters, then they'll send you basically a draft version of the mark and what it will look like. And you just need to look over the information as far as, is it showing the right mark? Does it have the correct photos? Is it in the right location? Is there, as far as the, all of that is just the to-reach description information. Is all of that correct? And then so once you've looked that over and you send back an email saying, yes, all the information is correct, then within a short period of time, that will get uploaded and it will be available on the Opus Share webpage. Galen had talked about as far as the various times it takes for things to happen. But once, your observation gets accepted and uploaded to OpenShare, well, then within a certain period of time, it's going to show up on that GPS on benchmark web map as being complete once it, however many observations it was asking for are there. So this is an example of, what the solution looks like, or what the Opus data sheet looks like. This is what you'll review before it goes up, and then actually what would be there afterwards too. So, and that just shows you a little closer what it looks like as far as the marks, where it shows, the ones that are complete, as far as we've got the number of observations that were being asked for. So, something else I want to talk about, and kind of take the opportunity, I've just got a few more slides here, but I want to talk about, as far as this is kind of in reference to the southern Louisiana. So we've done 4 different surveys to update control in southern Louisiana, and so the last one was the 2016 survey, and we very similar to the 2010 survey. That one got caught up in the first multi-year core solution, which created a need for the NAD 83 2011 national adjustment, GEOID 12B, or GEOID 12, which turned into A and then B. But so anyway, so the 2010 survey actually got caught up in all of that and didn't get published until, I'd have to look back, but it was somewhere after it was either very late 2012 or early 2013. So similar to that, this 2016 survey has gotten caught up in several things, as far as there was another multi-year core solution, GEOID 18. The 2016 survey, the information from that was a part of the GEOID 18, but it's also got caught up in a number of these projects that are going on as far as the NSRS modernization. And just like, having creating a delay of us publishing the modernized NSRS, this 2016 survey is the same things happened to it. So, it was a project entirely, carried out, as far as initiated and carried out by NGS. It was NGS crews that did the observations. We did there were about 160 marks overall, actually, somewhere in that range. We did accept and work with some volunteers, as far as the one to do observations. Calcasieu Parish did a number of observations and got that data to us to be included. Also the Corps of Engineers, and then the Nickel State, they submitted information. So those were added into it. Another thing that kind of took longer for this survey, this project, was prior to this, as far as for the 2004, 6, and 2010 surveys, excuse me, when it came to the, they're all processed relative to the cores, so the processing was not an issue. It was when it came down to the overall network adjustment. And so the first 3 surveys we utilized, and the vertical adjustment is really the harder one. Okay, the geometric adjustment, basically the horizontal that produces the latitude, longitude, and ellipsoid height, that one's easy. I mean, as far as we get that we tie it into the cores, we constrain them, and we get a good and consistent result from that. When it comes to the vertical adjustment, that's because we're trying to tie this to NAVD 88, and knowing what heights are most probably correct as far as to constrain that network, the vertical component of that network, to tie it to NAVD88. That's the hard part coming up. The first 3 surveys basically used what was called the vertically time-dependent positioning model, VTDP, and that resulted from the study by the late Roy Daka, Dr. Roy Daka, and Kurt Schinkel. They did a study as far as rates of displacement, vertical rates of displacement on benchmarks in the northern Gulf region. So the VTDP developed from that, and basically there were projected rates of displacement for marks within the northern Gulf region. And so we observed a number of those marks in these GPS surveys. So we would use those predicted rates of vertical change and validate it through GPS, and then come up with heights that we could constrain vertically for the overall network. The thing that would change as far as the 2016 is that we went back. We did not use the VTDP model on this one. They went back and they reprocessed the 2004, 6, and 2010 surveys to be consistent with the 16. And then they compared the differences, the changes in ellipsoid heights to try to come up with rates of displacement, rates of change, and the velocities on these benchmarks. And so that took a while. And so all of that is done. It was, some of the rates some of the areas showed a little different from the VTDP, and so that kind of throws it in there where you have to do more investigation as far as to try to make sure that what you're coming up with is correct. And so that's part of what was different about this one. So we've got all that done, and we're close to the final publishing of these positions. They'll be loaded into the NGS database over the next couple of months, but also that 2016 information will be a part of because it's a blue booking project. It will be a part of the information that goes into the vertical transformation model. So this shows you a map of the marks that were a part of that 2016 survey. It looks very similar to a lot of the marks were ones that we've repeated in the prior 3 surveys. There's probably about 100 marks that were in those prior 3 surveys. In other words, they were the same as some of those. But we did, again, we tied in, I think there's 9 benchmarks in Mississippi, and those made connections to a leveling project that the Mississippi DOT, paid and had done. And basically, it was according to that Tech 50 study that Dr. Daka and Kurt Schinkel did. And so these were just ties, for the Louisiana network to that vertical network, those level lines, just to give us some additional information. So this information you won't see it on the priorities map, the GPS on benchmark web map, but because the information is blue booked and it'll be there, and this will be a part of that vertical transformation model. Now, we've gone through and looked at as far as, excuse me, we've looked at, there are other marks out there that have not been observed since the 2006 survey. And so we went through and looked at those and have added those. They're not there yet, but they soon will be, as far as additional marks that have prior published orthometric heights that could be a part of the GPS on benchmark project. And so The purple, the magenta on this map shows you what is, the marks that are on that, the GPS on benchmark web map. So if you filter it for, just the state of Louisiana, it would show you those magenta marks. Well, soon we're going to add these other marks in. These are different from the 2016 surveys, but they're marks that have a history. And if you do GPS or OPIS share observations on these, well, then that will give us another observation in a time series, and it'll help in that vertical transformation model. Plus, it'll have those updated coordinates as far as going into the modernized NSRS, like Galen had spoke about earlier. So this is just showing you a screenshot of what it looks like as far as that web map and how this information for any of those that get observed will just further densify the 2016 information that will be there and be a part of it. So that's everything I have as far as unless somebody has some questions.
Denis, this is Tony. I've got one question. Hang on a second. Here we are. There was one request for the name of that photo editing software, and I didn't catch it quickly enough to be able to answer him directly.
Okay, it is called DS World, and it's really a program that it developed from it stands for Data Sheet World, and it allows you to go in, pull marks, very similar to what you do with as far as when you do a mark retrieval on the NGS web page. It has similar options. You can do it by county, you can do it by a radius, a list of PIDs, but it also has this. It's kind of geared also towards submitting photos and for marks, and so there's an editing function in there also.
All right, thank you. I'm going to wait a second, see if there's any other questions that come in. I don't see any yet. And since they've had a little time to put some in, I want to proceed by telling you thank you
Okay.
for your presentation. And Galen and Kathleen, and I hope that the audience has been as well informed as I've been, and we look forward to another such event in the future. I'm going to see if any of the panel members have any last questions, and if not, it may be the end of the show.
Hey, Tony, is any of that history in writing?
Come down here, Cliff.
Any of that history in writing?
What history? I'm sorry.
Everything you just said about all of the different surveys. And
Oh, Denis, I have a question about the history of the surveys, particularly the ones in South Louisiana that NGS did and then went back and did some more. Is that in writing? Cliff Mounier asked that question.
As far as the I would have to check and see if there's been a compilation of talking about it. There are reports that are generated for, at the end of the project as far as what was done, for the processing and adjustment, but those would be individual reports. But that information should be available, yeah.
All right. I thank everyone for their participation, particularly Randy, who's been silent mostly in the background and twisting the knobs and making sure that all of this works. So thank you, Mighty Oz. Otherwise, thank you, everyone.